My good buddy Che Chou is here, and you and I go back many years, my friend. What is going to happen this weekend? What are you predicting? What's everybody excited about?
I mean, a lot of the good teams that were sort of the dominant teams didn't actually come. They didn't make it out. So
Because it's too far. Because this is the first big one in Japan, right?
No, I mean, it's just sometimes that's just how the Pro League standings shakes out, right? And so I mean, because in the Pro League they're all super good, and so sometimes victories are eked out, right? And so so here I think the major story coming out of here is. Well, one, it was kind of a bummer that Norengo didn't make it. I mean, there's the hometown favorites, etc. And the stories coming out here is like there's some new teams here that I'm kind of on the lookout for, right? So, I mean, this could be the tournament that a team like Giants, make a name for themselves. So, awesome. Yeah.
And I guess that's part of what makes your job exciting from week to week, right? It's a new story every time.
Yeah, exactly. And I get asked all the time, like, who are you rooting for, or whatever. And my response is always like. I'm biased for a good story. It's like I want that. I want that. Game 5 grand finals. I don't want a blowout, right? So it's like I want it to be a close match, as close as possible. So.
What's crazy about this, I think NASCAR is maybe the closest analogy where people will sit and watch a 500-lap race for hours and hours and hours. You've got this place packed for 2 full days.
And I mean, it's besides just the viewership, but there is also an audience experience here. I mean, the great thing about these Pro League finals or the majors that we do is that they're big summits, they're big celebrations of the brand, of Rainbow Six, right? Yeah. Brings the community together, thousands of people come together. It's almost like a Rainbow Six convention in a lot of ways, right? And so there is this whole starting to develop a lifestyle here also with Rainbow Six.
This is one of the first big eSports events for this game and for Ubisoft, I think, in Japan. How does it feel to bring your game to this country?
Well, it's amazing. Japan and the Japanese community is incredibly passionate about Rainbow Six Siege, which is a big surprise as well. We have a lot of fans throughout the entire planet, and we have also some specific communities like from France, from Brazil, and Japan, where the passion for Siege and its esport is just unbelievable. Yeah. It's a Pro League finals, and filling this room to the brink was just simple. Look at this. Everyone is coming, everyone wants to get in there, and the Japanese community has been fantastic.
When you decide on something like that, is it a sense that the community is asking for that, or does the team get together and your esports managers and all that just sort of decide that this is the right time and the right place?
One, we want to travel the world as much as we can with this event because we know we have fun everywhere, and we want to provide them with that kind of experience in different locations. We don't want to stick to just one place, and we want to go around the world, visit our fans, because we know that not everyone can travel necessarily on the other side of the planet. So ideally, if we can move from a place to another to make sure that everyone has access to the event at least once, that'd be awesome. After that, the exact location depends on a lot of factors, some very practical ones, but also, like you said, how the community reacts to our game, how involved they are with its esports scene, and how we believe we could have a nice time with them.
You are now overseeing esports for Ubisoft.
Yes, I'm the Senior Director of Esports for North Central South America.
Incredible. Did you ever sort of see yourself in that position when you started your career?
Back in '98 or whatever, when we first met each other? I mean, I think that no. The answer is no. But I think what is interesting is that when I think about esports, it's essentially storytelling. It's creating entertainment, right? Yeah. And so a big part of it is rooted in editorial. And what I used to do as a writer for video games is I was in editorial.
Yes.
Right. And that's how we met.
That's
and
right.
So, in a way, I didn't stray too far from where I started because I'm still telling stories that it's still editorial in some ways. Yeah. I think the stakes are much higher now, and the scale is much bigger. So yeah.
It is much bigger. And one of the things that I've definitely recognized around esports is like it sort of erupted out of a type of gamer and people that sort of were already in the inside of it, and it slowly started to grow and reach a lot more people. And I guess that's part of your responsibility is how to bring new people to this.
Well, I think that the thing about esports is that it always starts with community, right? And so, before there was technology to enable esports storytelling, like streaming platforms and things like that, it was just people playing together in person, right?
Yeah.
Split screen, couch playing, basement like LANs, all the stuff that we've seen in the past. And I think technology has enabled the growth of esports to become what it is today. But you strip away all that stuff, and it's really just hardcore gamers competing against each other on their favorite games, right?
Yeah.
And so, when it comes to where we started to where we are now, I think technology has changed everything.
Yeah.
And so you can have online leagues, you can have people, everything from online leagues to,
Massive tournaments
occasions like this,
Yeah.
right? Where, if you were to told me back when we met in '99 that thousands of people would come and sit and watch 10 people play video games, I probably would have, laughed, because this just wasn't happening back then, right? It's just, this is not a thing. So
we in our first season we did interviews with people that remember that GameWorks location-based entertainment that Steven Spielberg was a part of, and they were talking about people in that GameWorks facility watching other people play, and there'd be sort of leaderboards. So it was like a real precursor and a real prescient thing that people would be into this competitive kind of challenge in games.
Well, even with the Twin Galaxy stuff, it's
Right,
competition with gaming has always been there, right? I don't know if you were, back when I was a kid on Saturday morning, there was the show called Starcade, right? And they would play like Pac-Man against each other.
We had video and arcade top 10 in Canada.
Yeah, right? And so esports took various shapes and forms before it sort of culminated into what we have today. I'm super grateful that Rainbow Six has gotten to where it is today, because it's been it's been a organic path to get there, right?
Well, it's an indelible brand too, right? You grew up in a time, and so did I, where Rainbow Six was just like this prestige, authentic shooter format. But I think no one predicted Siege. No one predicted this scale of growth, right?
So I think this, in looking back, has been the result of 3 to 4 years of consistency, right?
Yeah.
And so we knew we had a passionate community out the gate, and so we knew that we had a good game, right?
Yeah.
So we just kept building on that energy, and so the community was organizing. We brought in partners like ESL to start doing a pro league early on, and it took years to build that viewership, and it took years to tell that story. Something like over like 16 seasons or something. So I think what we have is built on organic foundations. And so the viewership that we have, the fan base that we have, they're here because they've always been here, and we didn't take any shortcuts. And this is why I think this ecosystem is super solid. I think what esports can bring to a game is a different kind of narrative, right?
Yeah.
So in a shooter like Rainbow Six, there's no overarching campaign storyline, right?
Yeah.
So you have a lot of operators with their backstories, but there's no like overarching story that people are engaged in constantly. Right? So what we have is esports is the story. The story of Rainbow Six is like who's on top, which teams are struggling, which teams are dominating, who are the hot players, who are the controversial players. That's the story of the game, right?
Yeah.
If you look at other esports as well, other big esports out there, most of them don't have campaigns. They're just multiplayer games.
Right.
And the narrative of that game becomes the esport itself.
That's right.
I think esports has great momentum. It's on this way up. I'm super bullish about where we are in sort of the opportunity that's in front of us as Ubisoft.
Yeah.
At the same time, I think we just need to be mindful of sort of concepts of like a bubble and sort of conversations around that, because is there a bubble? Who's to say, right? Because things haven't really been played out to the extent that we know.
We're just getting started.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
And so when we think, okay, a bubble, is there a bubble economy happening? I think that the money that is in esports right now are from partners and sponsors who want to be there. I think they feel like this is the best way to reach a demographic they can never reach otherwise.
Right.
And so they're doing it through esports. And I think as publishers who work with these partners, we're also learning, right? So we're also learning along with them to understand, okay, if you're going to invest this amount of money as a partnership, and your goals are X, Y, and Z with this demographic, what is the best way to get that message across? It's not always just flashing a logo on the broadcast, right? So it's about partnering with these guys to understand what their goals are, and then how we can leverage our esport to help convey that message. I think that's the way to go about it, to have a sustainable industry where we move away from conversation around a bubble, and it's more about because I truly believe that there is value here for those brands.
Yes.
It's really
You've
about
packed a stadium.
Yeah,
People have paid money to come and watch this, so clearly...
Yeah, millions of people watch online, right?
Yes,
So
yeah.
it's like the eyeballs are there. It's really about how we work with our partners to get the value they need.
What are you finding? I mean, you're the ambassador for esports, and I think Ubisoft probably says, okay, we need you in this meeting with this broadcaster or whatever. Are people picking up on this now, or is there an understanding of where we can go with esports?
Oh yeah, I mean, when it comes to the awareness now, even people who wouldn't typically engage with esports, both within Ubisoft and from our partners, it's astounding. I mean, even back in 2017, I think the landscape has changed so much, right? So I left sort of the Halo esports program in 2016.
Right.
Between now and then and now, it's like the landscape has changed so much, to the point where we're seeing our sponsorship value almost triple year over year, right? Just because like everyone is aware now that esports is a thing, and also they're starting to see that like, okay, we can really use something like this to speak to people that would never otherwise listen to our brand, right? So.
Rainbow Six Siege is like, it's one of the best stories in the history of games. It's like World of Warcraft, sort of like continuous sort of output. But I'm wondering, how do you do that again? What is next for you guys, and what are you guys sort of
That's a good question. It's actually it's a lot of what I think about, right? Because my team is really focused on growing the here and now, and really the question becomes, how do we create more Rainbow Sixes? And that's something that we are focused on doing across our portfolio.
Right.
And so, but I think it really does. There's no shortcuts. Like in esports, you can't take shortcuts. There's no.
You can't make an esports game, right? You got to make a game that the community says this should be an esport.
Exactly. And so, because the community chooses whether or not it's an esport, what we're going to do is we're going to look at games within the Ubisoft portfolio that have the most player energy, the most community energy around the game, right? Like games with the biggest monthly active users, etc. And then look at like what can we do with those games? Because right now, we have games that would surprise you with how many people are playing them. And when I think about the fact that millions of people every month are playing this game, and yet we're giving them nothing, no purpose, no sort of like overarching purpose, week to week, month to month. I think there's a missed opportunity there. And so how do we instill a sense of purpose, a sense of a competitive program or a framework where they can now invest sort of their heart and their spirit and energy into the game that they've been playing for years, right? So I think that we're about to introduce a whole new way of looking at Ubisoft games that give the player a new sense of purpose and meaning.
Okay, Che, we could talk forever about this,
I know, I'm sorry.
but this is it's an incredible story,
It's
and
great to see you.
It's great to see you too, and congrats.
Happy to be back on EP.
Yeah, man,
Yeah,
absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.